So in the episode right before this one, you learned why it is so important to be crystal clear and very specific on who your podcast is here to serve. But what happens when you take it too far? In part 2 of this live coaching session, we're going to unpack why Dennis's podcast was actually too narrow to grow and what I recommended to reposition it without losing the message that mattered the most to him. So if you're thinking, wait a minute, I thought niching down was supposed to help. Yes, you're right, until it goes too far. So if you know right now that there are people out there who should be listening to your show but who aren't, this episode is going to help you fix that. Let's jump right back in. Welcome to Insider Secrets to a Top 100 podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Elmer. Let's make your business binge-worthy. So, Dennis, so far we have talked about podcast content gatekeeper number 1, which is the very first thing that listeners see, even though they process it unconsciously, and that is your podcast cover art. But there are still 4 other content gatekeepers that listeners have to go through in order to decide whether or not they want to hit play on your content. So, the next thing that a listener is immediately going to see once your cover art grabs their attention is your episode title. And this happens so fast. In fact, in the online world, a first impression is made in 0.05 seconds. So that title has to do a lot of heavy lifting. And ideally, we want that title to communicate the overall value of the podcast, or specifically what that listener is going to get out of listening to your show versus the others that they could be listening to. And ideally, we want that title to communicate the value of the podcast. So this again goes back to listener psychology, where we know for sure that this is going to be a high school coach who is already working in the field and who specifically is struggling with communication with the parents and then maybe having some issues with administration, and that we really want to lean into the personal development piece of this. So again, that can all be flushed out more, but ideally we'd want to convey that in the title as well. So when I look at your title right now, which is Game On SoCal, Inside High School Sports, and then it has your name, to me, that doesn't convey what we just talked about in terms of the personal development of the coach and specifically who it's for. Because ideally, what we want is when someone lands on your podcast, we want them to immediately see the value in the show. And that's going to come through the name first, because that's what's going to earn you that first click. So tell me a little bit about the background behind the name. Can you give me a little bit of insight into that?
Yeah, I was actually just looking for something fun, something unique. And then I was actually maybe going a little bit the opposite of what you're suggesting. I was trying to go with something that wasn't just chats with Dennis Guerra, right? I wasn't going with coaching techniques. I was trying to be a little more fun, a little more generic, hopefully to grab other people. And so that one came up. I don't remember exactly where it came up, when it came up, but that's what I was aiming at.
Okay. Well, and this is good too. And this is why I ask this, because some of the things that are important to you as a host that you want to convey in the show, if we can bring that through in the name as well, that's a good thing. So these are, again, there's so many things to take into consideration. But what I would say, because, okay, the next thing that a listener is going to go to, that gatekeeper number 3, is they're going to skim the description. And when I read your description, I'm not seeing what the immediate benefit would be for me as a listener. The ultimate destination for all things Southern California high school athletics. So to me, that's not necessarily clear that this is for the coaches who coach high school athletics. The other thing though, because when I read this, it looks like a regional podcast. And if I'm not in SoCal, then this isn't for me, even if I am a high school coach. But what I'm hearing you say is that what you teach is applicable for high school coaches no matter where in the world you are.
Yes.
And is that what you want to come through on the podcast?
Yes, that's what I would like to pass along.
Okay. So we have the opportunity to broaden up the market a little bit. The niche is still very specific, coaches and high school athletics, but we want to make sure that they know that this is for them too. Mm-hmm. This will also give you a broader market to reach, which is going to aid in the growth of your podcast long term. Because as it sits right now, it looks like we're only talking about SoCal, high school athletics, and it's not specific to the coaches. So as it's positioned at the moment, it's very regional, which gives us almost a niche within a niche.
Right. Okay.
Because as I'm reading this, and again, from outside perspective, which is, okay, inside high school sports, but it's unclear, is this for players? Is this for parents? Is this for coaches? So we want to make sure that that is coming through and that that's specified in the messaging of your podcast and specifically in the actual name of your show, because that's what's going to get someone to click the first time. And then we want to reiterate and reinforce this in the description, because that's what's unconsciously going to get someone to go, okay, yeah, I'm in the right place, and potentially click into your episodes, which brings us to podcast content gatekeeper number 4, which is your episode titles. I know you've only got 4 episodes right now. Episode titles are important for a couple reasons. And one is because if someone were to find your podcast, we'll call it the traditional way, where they're browsing a category and then they click your podcast and then they skim your description. And then the next thing they're going to do is they're going to swipe and look through recent episodes, and they're going to look through what these titles are. The other way people find podcasts is they'll type a search term in the search bar and it will pull up podcasts and individual episodes. And so sometimes the first impression that someone has of your podcast might be the episode title and the episode artwork. So we want to also be thinking about our podcast from that perspective. If someone's going to find it that way, whether it's someone who's scrolling to say, is this for me? Or whether it's someone who's in the search and your episode is the one that pops up. We want to make sure that the benefit to the listener for that episode is immediately clear. What are they going to get out of it? Because if that is not clear, then it's going to be harder to earn that click. So when I'm looking through at your titles, so right now the first one that pops up, which is your most recent episode, says respect all, fear none. That's a quote. Coach Mo, girls basketball, St. Pius X, St. Matthias Academy. That doesn't really tell me as the listener what I'm going to get out of that episode. So that would be a easy tweak to make. And this is honestly a big thing that I see with a lot of podcasts is where, we've got these incredible experts coming on the show and they're talking about really important topics, but because the title doesn't communicate that, nobody's hearing it, or very few people are hearing it.
Okay.
So to me, even just looking at like the 4 episodes that you have, what I would say, and this is kind of my hack for titling episodes, is I look at what's going to be the strongest hook for the listener and the strongest benefit to the listener based on what was discussed in that episode. Maybe you talked about a couple of things in the episode, but what's going to be of the most benefit to the listener that when they listen, they will get that out of the episode. And so when we can align our titles to hook them and also deliver on the promise of that hook, what that does is it gets people interested, it gets them to click, it gets them to give the episode a chance. And then it also builds trust in you, the host, because you're delivering on what you've promised. So this is why a lot of times maybe you've had this experience where it's like, this title sounds great. And then you click the episode and it's like 40 minutes in and they still haven't talked about the thing yet that there was on, or like it's clickbait. And
right.
We don't want to do that, right? That erodes trust pretty quickly. But we also want to be able to hook people in. So it's a balance of both. Some people are good with the hooks, but they're not good on delivering. Some people are great on delivering, but they're not good with the hook. So we want to have both so we can get people listening to the podcast. That's going to help you convert more listeners. Cool. All right. So the next thing that, again, first impressions for a podcast, someone's interested in your show. Okay. They've clicked through, they've skimmed your description. The episode titles are grabbing them. So now they're going to pick one and they're going to click into it. They're not going to click play yet. And what they're going to do is they're going to skim what we call the show notes, those episode descriptions. That's why this is content gatekeeper number 5, because this is kind of like the last thing standing in the way of them hitting play in most cases. Now, most people are not going to read it word for word, but the first line of that description needs to reinforce the benefit of listening and or present the information that's covered in that episode in a way that grabs attention. So what I mean by that is let's appeal to surprise here. Let's appeal to something polarizing here. Let's appeal to maybe an opinion that not everybody agrees with, but that maybe we're going to present that because we want to grab that attention and then kind of, wherever the episode goes from there, right? The other day I said most podcasts don't make money. That's the reality, right? I can't remember word for word what like the first line, but it was something intentionally polarizing because it's designed to grab attention. And then we want to back that up with a few sentences of what they're going to get out of listening and what they'll be able to walk away with. So and I'll call it a mistake, it's never intentional, but one of the things that I see happen in show notes a lot of times, especially with an interview-based podcast, is they'll highlight the guest in this conversation, it's about so-and-so guest with so-and-so expertise that's here to talk about such and such topic. Right now, your listener doesn't care about your guest, and your job as the host is to get them to care. The way we get them to care is by framing the guest as the solution to whatever the problem, challenge, shocking thing, or polarizing thing that you're going to be discussing for that listener, framing it from the listener's perspective.
Okay.
At the end of the day, if you can just remember, this is for a listener. What's a listener going to get out of this? And how can I communicate that to the specific person that I'm looking to attract? Then guess what? That's going to be a win for the listener. It's going to be a win for you. And it's going to be a win for your guest, because the guest is going to get the play on the episode. We've earned the listener's attention to get the play. You get the download. The guest gets the exposure. If that doesn't happen, then that doesn't happen, right? Where if we're promoting the guest, the listener's not interested, the guest doesn't get heard, you don't get the download, and the listener doesn't get the benefit at the end of the day, right? So it's just kind of thinking through what literally, a lot of what I teach, yes, it's psychology based, but it really just comes back to, at the end of the day, it's a human on the other side of your podcast. And when we can understand that human really well, we can communicate with them really well, which it sounds like you're really good at doing and helping coaches do really well. So, I would imagine, we could be thinking about that here specifically for who your show is for and how can we help them and position it in a way that they see, yeah, this is exactly what I need.
Okay.
All right. Pause there. Is that helpful? Questions? Did I just fire hose you with a lot of stuff?
No, I think on that last part, I tried to do that. If you look at the first episode I did, in the middle of the conversation, he says, baseball's boring. And I titled it that way, but I should probably give more about what the listener is going to get out of it in the title. And then I can perhaps start my episode description that way, episode note that way.
So in the title, and I haven't listened to this episode to be able to say, here's would be a good hook for this, but you would want the title to convey the benefit, right? Or the problem that you're going to solve, or the unmet desire that maybe your person has that this is going to help them with. And then, in the description, you could be baseball is boring, period. Or is it? ? In this episode, this is exactly right what we're going to tackle and how that relates to the value that they're going to get out of it.
Okay.
That
makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. So for your next steps, so what I want to do is I want to go back to where we started, which is with that ideal listener. And I want to have you do a deeper dive on who specifically you want to reach with your show. Not who you think you should reach, not who might listen or who might be interested, but who you ultimately, if you would be overjoyed if you had thousands of that one listener listening to your podcast. So this is going to be a little homework for you, but also a challenge to really get into the psychology of your listener. And when you start with that, the other things that we talked about today, they'll become a lot clearer to be able to say, okay, now that I know this listener really well, here's how. And the beauty is, Dennis, you've got 4 episodes, so we're still new and we've got room to play. Right? Where it's not like you've got 400 episodes and now people know you for something and we're trying to pivot. That's different. So we've got some room here to play. And I just say that to encourage you too, that we've got just a few tweaks away from really being able to connect you with that ideal listener that's out there looking for a podcast like yours.
That's fantastic.
Awesome. All right. Any questions for me as we wrap it up?
No, I appreciate the time. I appreciate you helping me out. And I had no problem being put on the spot, and I got to go back and look at it. And that's one thing I learned when I was at PodFest was you always have the chance to rethink it. And talking to so many podcasters that had revamped their programs, still keeping the heart of what they were wanting to do. So that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Oh, good. You're welcome. Well, we'll provide you with the video to this. You'll have the replay. You can access it. So thank you for being here and for being in the hot seat. I know that's not easy to do.
Thank you.
And if you're listening to this right now and you're like, I want to be in the hot seat, I need this kind of help with my podcast, then you're in luck because we are so excited to bring more of these on-air coaching sessions here to the show because I fully recognize that PodLaunch is a very advanced program. It is not for everyone, but these on-air coaching sessions are super accessible and they are a great way to get my brain on your show right here and in real time. So here's how it works. With our production cycle, we typically batch episodes up to 3 months in advance and spots for these are going to be pretty limited. So if you want to be considered for an upcoming session, then what I want you to do is drop everything you're doing right now. If you were driving, yes, that means trains pull over on the side of the road, open up the show notes and click the link to get on the wait list. Add your information there and my team will reach out to you with more details whenever we make more spots available. And then don't go anywhere, because in the next episode, we have got a HuffPost writer and pitch expert joining us to break down what it actually takes to write an excellent pitch, both to land bigger guests on your show and to land yourself on bigger shows as a guest. That's all coming up next to help you make your business binge-worthy.